Hi, everyone. This is Michael Gerard, and I'm here with another Astro Tidbit, this time the first in my series of the exaltations and falls of the planets, this time of the planet Mercury. And I'm recording this when Mercury is in its fall, so you'll have to excuse me if the communication is not the best, but I'm going to power through it. It is my second take, by the way. So, what is the exaltation of a planet? What does that mean? Exaltation is the idea that a planet is lifted up. Other astrologers have described it as a planet who's an honored guest in the sign that it's in, as well as the highest expression of the planet coming in the sign that it's exalted in. Now, when it comes to the essential dignity of a planet, exaltation is considered second only to having domicile rulership. However, domicile suggests that you're getting the most of the planet, both the good and the bad. So, moving on. What else can I tell you about exaltation? Well, every single one of the classical planets, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon, if going in order from slowest to fastest, has a sign of exaltation as well as a specific degree of exaltation. And I'll go ahead and share a link in the description to Astronomer, which actually does a good job of describing the origins of the actual degrees of exaltation. However, it should be noted that not every sign has an exaltation lord. For example, the sign of Aquarius and the sign of Leo would be two really good examples. Now, Kira Ryberg references exaltation as a kind of secondary rulership of a sign, and I think that's actually pretty good. You do get an extra dignity, and the sign is able to do more things when it's getting a planet that has either its domicile lord or its exaltation lord there. Now, in the absence of having an exaltation ruler, triplicity often becomes the secondary lord. And for more on that, you can listen to any one of the recent episodes of Threads of Fate. She does a good job of laying that out. Now, when it comes to the planet Mercury, Mercury is something that I like to call kind of dead neutral, but in some ways it can be thought of as taking on the characteristics of other planets that it's making an aspect to. So, like its god's namesake, it's often associated with communication, quickness, slipperiness, commerce. You see that root word merc in there from the name of the god Mercury, the planet. So, commerce, of course, entails trade and prices, thoughts, data, and facts. But Mercury is also associated with, in some negative significations, or maybe a bad thing that is for with a good intent, such as lies, thievery, and tricks. Sometimes a trick actually helps you realize a larger truth, and a lie, does this dress that I've already spent, $15,000 on, do I look good in it? Oh, yes, you do, because you don't want to ruin the person's big day, let's say. So I often encourage people to think of Mercury like its chemical namesake, the element mercury, which in previous days is known as Quicksilver. And I'll probably refer to it more as Quicksilver here just to distinguish between the two. So it's the elemental mercury is the only metal that has a room temperature as a melting point. So again, getting at that idea of slipperiness, hard to contain. So, where is Mercury's exaltation? Well, it's in the sign of Virgo, which traditionally is symbolized as a virgin maiden with a bird or maybe a sheaf of wheat. Now, Virgo is a mutable earth sign that is associated with purification and precision. So, this is where Mercury, the cat's making a little noise in the background again. Mercury's in its fall right now. Mercury, with its emphasis on facts, data, and communication, tends to shine, right? So Virgo is itself a mutable sign, so it's able to sort of move and adapt to Mercury's slipperiness, but it's also able to contain it to some extent. Now, when it comes to that same analogy to Quicksilver, elemental mercury, its main use on its own has traditionally, as far as we all sort of remember this if we're of a certain age, is associated with thermometers, which is provides us data via precise measurements. And I've always thought that that's a pretty good association with elemental mercury. And of course, you note that even though it is a glass, it is a solid container, so it has that earthy aspect, but it's kind of see-through, it's kind of transparent. So And it's also associated with giving us really good data. And it again, it allows for Mercury, it both contains Mercury, but allows it to do its thing. And it provides us information by doing so. Now, when it comes to Mercury's fall, it has to do with difficulty expressing the ineffable, that which is expressed without words, or that which is implied, or that which is conveying something or communicating something without that emphasis on facts, right, and data points. So its fall and exile is in the sign of Pisces, which has Jupiter as a domicile ruler and Venus as an exaltation ruler. So those are both benefics. So we get this idea of Mercury in Pisces with the form of communication known as poetry, where meaning is often unclear, and other qualities such as rhyming and the sounds and emotions that are conveyed are often more important than the words themselves. So if we were to, use a very simple example, Dr. Seuss, he does a lot of kind of nonsense rhyming, but it tells kind of a fun, silly story. And the idea there is not so much that we're worried about an actual cat who is wearing an actual hat. Instead, we're conveying the idea of the sounds of the word actually matter to a kid who's learning how to read and learning that the letters are associated with a certain sound. So that's it as far as my take on Mercury and its exaltation and fall. If you have any thoughts on this, any additional information you'd like to share, or just want to share your astrological questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. And if you're interested in a more in-depth explanation of your natal chart, feel free to reach out to me at skymirror.today. Thanks so much.